what on earth are these contraptions? If you haven't seen them before, stick around and we'll show you what we're going to be using them for. Hi, welcome back. Something a little bit different today. We're doing our seed planting. We've got a bit of a different technique to share with you.
We're going to build, we're going to garden some flowers, and I hope you enjoy it. Bye!
Well, that's definitely a good start made. I'm going to do all the fiddly seeds tonight inside once the kids have gone to bed and I've got a little bit more time and patience. But we've got all the big stuff done and I'm going to get that tray inside now. And then, like I said, all of these we'll wrap up, keep warm for a week and then see what happens. Finished dancing? So I didn't do a huge amount of explaining yesterday, and it got to 11:30 midnight by the time I'd finished planting those seeds, and the last thing I wanted to do is wake up the house talking to myself. So I'll give you a little lowdown on how this system works and what I think of it so far. So essentially the system works on a two-stage basis. You can buy all them individually, and having used them now, you could get away with just using one or the other. The way we've gone is bought the kit of the two sizes. This one is the, I think it was called the Micro 20 or something 20. Anyway, that has 20 individual cells, which are only probably 1.5 centimeters square, or 20 mil square. So they are pretty tiny, and the dimples that are left by the little metal molds are very, very shallow. But that's fine for most things like salads and things. But you did see me last night just going along with the skewer, wooden skewer, and just deepening them slightly for things like the tomatoes, where I think it'd be better to sink them down 10 mil or so. You can also use this Mini 4, I think it's called, which blocks out the 50 mil squares, which are a much more kind of substantial block. Now those ones, you can fit exactly 24 of those in a standard seed tray, and they fit in there nicely. And these ones are all planted up. I think these are the sunflowers, but all the big stuff we went straight into these blocks. Things like the courgettes, the cucumbers, I think some of the peppers, sunflowers, and also the salad mixes we do, the kind of the ready mixed salad mix. We last night I was kind of dropping maybe 6 or so seeds in each of the holes, so they'll kind of come up as a bunch. The next option, which I thought was the most novel of the lot, is the fact that when you make your tiny little starter cubes, that you can then, when you transplant those, rather than pricking them out of a normal tray or pushing out the little cells, you can fit this blocker with this little moulding here. So you see this one has the black little knobs on there, which correspond perfectly to these. So these kind of act as the female of the two, and you simply have a block with a square hole in, take your plug plant from this one and you just drop it into the next size block, and then it starts off and expands into there. The little dowels, or whatever they call these mouldings, that are on the main blocker are only about 10 mil deep, so I thought that was quite shallow for certain things. So you can actually swap out and you can put in these, which are about twice the depth. So if you were planting I don't know, things like, well, if you were doing cuttings, definitely. But if you were planting things like maybe the peas or something that's a bit bigger, then it would definitely help to get them a little bit deeper. So what's the science behind it? Why would you use this over conventional nursery trays or plug trays or whatever, or pots? Well, one, you haven't got all the plastic kicking around. And while you can reuse them year in, year out, things like the seed trays will last for years, but the kind of flimsy, more brittle type pots, especially the trays with all the little plugs in there, once you push them out, you might get another year out by kind of reforming them, but they're quite flimsy and they don't really last. Plus, you know, it's just endless amounts of plastic. Whereas this is a fairly sustainable way to go, and I'm pretty sure that this thing's going to last a good few years. They're British made, and they've been around, I think, since the 70s. And I'll put a link down below where you can find all the info and all the different sizes. You can get these on a much bigger scale, which are like a stand-up version with a big handle. So the science behind it is that when you plant a seed into a pot or a little tray, when it sends its roots out and they hit the plastic at the side of the pot, they turn, and you can end up with them kind of tangled, and then they can become root bound. So when you pop them out and plant them in, the first so many days, I don't know, maybe 3 days to a week or so, the plant's kind of trying to sort itself out, straighten out, and then get ready to go. Whereas when you go this route, when you've planted your seed in here, like this sunflower, when it sends its roots out and they get to the edge of the cube, as soon as they get to the oxygen or the air, they stop there and they kind of just wait. So they don't come out and carry on wrapping around themselves. So they wait there. It's called, I think they call it air pruning, and they just basically hold until once you've transplanted them and they're already facing the right direction and they're just ready to rocket out into the surrounding soil. But I was doubtful about how well these things would hold, but they are pretty compact, and I imagine once the roots start taking, they will really bind them together. So what are the negatives? Well, it takes longer. You've got to make up the mix ready, and I'm pretty sure we need to work on that, because the mix we used to start with was a John Innes type compost. I put a little bit of sand in there, or grit, some vermiculite in there, and then we wet it down. But there are actual recipes that people use online which perhaps lend themselves a little bit more to the blocking. We were kind of just making it up a bit. Getting the right consistency of water helps, because you can then block and squeeze and compress them much easier. But I think just the texture of the soil and the compost is what's key. The bigger blocks worked fine, but when you use this little one, I definitely made the error to start with of just using it straight out of the bag, the compost, whereas then I went on to start sifting it. And once you sieved it, taking the big bits out, this worked a bit better, but I still think a much finer soil mix would work better with this. So we need to work on that, because the dimples on top barely show when the compost is too coarse, so we'll just need to work on it. But the bigger one, like I said, worked really well, and they're actually really quite sturdy and substantial, those blocks in there. And one more thing, when you're using the trays, most of these seed trays have a moulded bottom, so they're ribbed on the bottom. And then of course when you put your blocks in there, they don't sit flat. And the big ones you can get away with it, but when you start putting the small ones on there, they just kind of tip and break up. So that's why I had to use that really big long flat, because it was smooth on the bottom, so that they sat. But you can, a lot of people use little plywood trays or timber trays for these, and that works fine. And one of the nice things is the fact that it's such a moist mix that you use to start with. You don't really have to water these for a good week, or kind of maybe 3 or 4 days if it was warm. So you haven't got to worry about disturbing the seedlings, a bit like when you start watering salads in and things like that. And you can wash the seeds around. There you go, there's a little insight into what's going on in and around the garden at the moment and what's to come. If anyone's been using these for any length of time, then it'd be great to hear from you. Let me know any tips you might have. There are various people with lots of experience going this way, which you can look up on YouTube or online. I think we'd first seen it with Justin Rhodes on his channel doing kind of soil blocking in their family greenhouse, but then I think Elliot Coleman was the original kind of person to sing their praises over in the States. But they've, like I said, they've been around for a long time over here in the UK, and I think people around Europe have been using them for a longer amount of time. But anyway, interesting bit of kit, and I think it'll only take a year or two to start saving on all the trays we would have been using. Any questions, stick them down below. We'll do a follow-up video in the next few weeks. So thanks for watching. Remember, if you can, do it yourself or food it yourself, and we'll see you next time.